particularly pleased to have Seth Goldman and Dan Pink with us this evening. Dan Pink is our moderator and master of ceremonies. You may also know him as a best-selling author or the host of the National Geographic Channel's Crowd Control. But at LearnServe, we know him best as the parent of LearnServe alumna Sophia Pink. We are glad to welcome Dan back again this year to do crowd control for our festivities tonight. And this year, we have Seth Goldman as our keynote speaker. Seth is the co-founder of Honest Tea, the nation's best-selling bottled organic tea, and the man who has brought organic, low-sugar, fair trade products to the Coca-Cola Company. He is also the co-author of Mission in a Bottle, as well as executive chairman of a new company, Beyond Meat. This is a man with those characteristics which we talk about a lot at LearnServe. A man with vision, tenacity, confidence, and leadership. So join me now in welcoming Seth Goldman and Dan Pink.
Seth, welcome to LearnServe.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Look at this crowd you got.
Wonderful to support a wonderful organization.
All right, so here we are, both of us.
We got our bottles of tea?
Yeah, we're both in the branding business here, so we got the Honest Tea bottles up here. Companies like all great institutions have creation myths. Tell us yours. How did this get started?
Sometimes I worry that ours is all too real. So this really started with a run in Central Park. I was thirsty after the run, and I went to a beverage cooler, and I said, there's nothing here to drink. And I was with a friend of mine who I ran track with in college, and he said, what do you mean there's nothing here? There's hundreds of options. I said, there are a lot of options, but they all have the same calorie profile. This was 1997. They all have the same calorie profile. They all have almost the same ingredients. So the real difference is, color and fizz and labels. Otherwise, it's all the same. Why isn't there something with 1 or 2 teaspoons of sugar? And when I make tea at home, I don't put in 5 or 6 teaspoons of sugar, but that's what was in most bottled drinks at the time. And so I reached back out to my professor from the Yale School of Management, Barry Nailbuff. When I had been his student, we had done a case study of the beverage industry, and Barry and I had agreed this was an opportunity. We just, at the time, didn't do anything about it. It's a lot, what they say, it's like the weather. People talk about it, don't do anything about it. So we talked about it, didn't do anything about it. And after that run, I reached out to Barry and said, I think I'm ready to do something about it. At the time, when I was his student, we had talked about, think about an Orangina, lightly sweetened, so soda and juice, lightly sweetened. But when he came back from India, Barry had been, in 97, the summer, he had been into India studying the tea industry, and he had come up with the name Honest Tea. And all of a sudden, the conversation changed when he told me that name, because it just it connected all the dots. I had an activist background, a mission-oriented mindset, and an entrepreneurial mindset. And when you could connect all 3 of those in a brand, I left my other job.
Tell us your other job at the time.
I came to DC to work for the Calvert Group. It's a socially responsible mutual fund company based in Bethesda. I loved it, great work, great people. I just had that entrepreneurial itch.
And so you quit.
So I went into, the time Barbara Krumzik was the president, and we had a great relationship, and I said, I really love it here, but I've got to try to create something. And she almost thought it was a joke, because I had 0 experience in the beverage industry. But actually, then she became one of our first investors.
All right. So I don't want to turn this into a congressional hearing, but I have in my hand the business plan.
Oh, my. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
We've done our due
it's
diligence
online.
here.
Our original business plan
don't
is
tell
online.
them that.
Well,
Make it seem like I'm putting more of an effort.
You did your research.
So I have in my hand here the business plan for Honest Tea. It's actually a remarkable document. I encourage you to read it. I want to point you to page 4.
Okay.
At the time in December of 1998.
Yeah.
That's what it's the business plan
okay,
for 1999.
Yeah, that's
So
right.
December
right.
of 1998. So
Yeah.
almost 18 years ago.
Yeah.
It says, Honest Tea is looking to raise up to $1.2 million
That's right.
in equity capital for the national distribution of the product. What were your sales last year?
Last year?
Yeah, what were your sales?
We did $178 million last year.
$178 million. Okay, so you were looking for $1.2 million. Did you get it?
Yes, we did. But what was funny?
Now, do you know who gave you that money, right?
I do.
And so they were very successful investors.
They were.
They were. Would they like to donate to LearnServe?
I can give you their names.
If you have their names, we can take them, at the gate there. So that's actually a fairly modest number, 1.2 million.
Well, what was funny,
yeah.
because the year before, basically our first year, we did $250,000 in sales. And so we went out to investors and said, we're raising this $1.2 million. And so the question is, well, what's that worth, right? You've proven the concept a little bit. And I will say we've always had lofty visions. So my co-founder Barry said, well, if you're doing $250,000 in sales and you've only really been out for a half a year, that's worth $4 million. And I can tell you that our success rate was about, for every 10 people I spoke to, one of them invested. Because the rest of them said, that's just, you're saying this company's worth too much at the time. So the folks who did invest did very well.
So on a $4 million valuation, right.
Yeah.
So, okay, here's something else that I found really interesting about this ancient business plan. I'm going to read you this. So this is from the business plan.
First page.
Business plan, mission statement. Honest Tea seeks to provide bottled tea that tastes like tea, a world of flavor, freshly brewed and barely sweetened. We seek to provide better tasting, healthier teas the way nature and their cultures of origin intended them to be. We strive for relationships with our customers, employees, suppliers, and stakeholders, which are as healthy and as honest as the tea we brew. Now, I think what's remarkable about that, it's still the mission.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So tell me, what was the role of this mission statement in navigating the choppy waters of entrepreneurship?
It's defined the business. It absolutely has, and it still defines the business today. We talk about this as a mission-driven business. So every innovation that we bring out, we think about how can we make a deeper impact a positive impact on people's health, a smaller environmental footprint, and then a better impact on the communities we source from. And so that continues to guide us. Just this year, and this is what's so neat about this particular development. I'm going to tell it with you, and then I'm going to tell you how it happened. So Honest Tea, we were the first company to source organic bottled tea, the first company to make fair trade certified bottled tea, which means we're investing in the supplier communities and putting money back into the communities. But just this year, we've converted all of the sugar for all of our teas, but this was the last step, so the sugar is now sourced from fair trade communities, which means we're reinvesting in Paraguay and other companies that we source from. What's neat about that is that I didn't make that decision. That decision came out of Atlanta. Because we have brand managers who
right, just to be clear, Atlanta is
where
the...
Coca-Cola is
right.
based. Sorry, so we sold to Coca-Cola in 2011, and of course I would have hoped we could have made that decision, but the fact is, Honest Tea never had enough of the margin to be able to afford to buy fair trade sugar. We moved to this new bottle just in the past few months. This bottle saved us 1.9 cents. It's cheaper than what we were buying.
Huh.
So we said, all right, 1 cent of the margin we're going to pocket, 0.9 cents we're going to go in and convert everything to fair trade sugar, which allows us to direct hundreds of thousands of dollars to these communities. So, and that was because we had a mission statement. It wasn't just some guy in Bethesda saying, hey, I really want to help these folks in Paraguay. It's part of the business, part of the brand.
Right, and I'm generally against taking advice from some guy in Bethesda. How does this mission statement sort of get into the bloodstream of the organization of the people there?
Well, it starts with how the company's founded, so it really is the first page in our business plan. It's in the product. It comes right into the product, right? I mean, the product is less sweet than anything else out there, or at least at the time it was. Organic is connected to the environmental footprint. The fair trade connects to the community support. And so it draws and attracts both customers and employees who want to be part of it. And so, of course, we have some employees who are great number crunchers and probably don't get as inspired by the mission. But the people who, but I think everybody in the company is open to that. And so the culture it obviously starts with the founder and just attracts people from there.
Now, we've got we got some young entrepreneurs, fledgling entrepreneurs out there.
I love it.
Tell me about what advice do you have for them about a mission
Yeah.
statement? Is that something that you should craft when you do any kind of venture? Is it something that you should craft as a personal mission statement?
You have to define what you're about. If you don't define it, others will define you. And so what's interesting is we grew Honest Tea really from the start. We had all these, they'll call them fancy investors, the smart money, that would come in and say, oh, we see all this, growth going on in energy drinks, and that's where we think you should be. Or they'd say, well, your product doesn't sell as well because it's not as sweet. If you made it sweeter, it would sell more. I mean, such obvious things. And
sure.
there was one who said, you got this socially responsible element. You really don't want a company based in Bethesda. Why don't you set up a P.O. box in Vermont or New Hampshire? I said, well, that's not honest. If you don't know what you stand for, and especially what's been so neat, and this is where I feel incredibly lucky, we partnered with Coca-Cola going back to 2008. And there's always an effort in a large company to converge and try to bring it to a common denominator. And because of our mission, because of our brand, and because of the 10 years we put into building the brand the right way, we were able to stand up. And I will also say I'm very fortunate, and my wife Julie is here, because there were definitely moments where there was pressure from Coke to do things that hadn't historically been part of Honest Tea. And so, people have said Honest Tea is a socially conscious company, and I like to say we're a Julie conscious company, because I knew if we made a compromise, I'd have to come home and look Julie in the eye and say, I think we're going to. But the fact is, this brand is as much the brand we built as it, even more so, because we couldn't have been fair trade sugar back when I was working on this thing.
Yeah, a good lesson for these young entrepreneurs. I like the way you said it. If you don't define yourself, others will define you. Yeah. But it hasn't been, Seth. You're a successful company. You started off, you get this inspiration after a run. It hasn't been a perfectly smooth journey.
Oh, no, it hasn't.
So this is a book that Seth and Barry Nailbuff, his co-founder, wrote. It's called Mission in a Bottle. It's actually written as a graphic novel. It's a terrific, terrific book. It's actually, I think it's actually an essential read for any entrepreneur. I think it's just a fabulous, fabulous read. But bringing this back to LearnServe for a second. So one of Jessica's and my daughters is a LearnServe alumnus and interested in entrepreneurship. And she read this book. She read it I think she might have read it in one sitting, because it's a really gripping read. And she came down clutching the book and she said, "This is so interesting. I can't believe how many times they almost went out of business." So tell us about some of the choppier times there, Seth.
This is the post-traumatic. People said this read like a horror story, and there were horror.
Well, it's not. I don't think it's incidental that, the cover of the book has them sailing on a bottle of Honest Tea, and there's like a giant wave about to knock these fresh-faced, socially conscious dudes off of the boat.
Well, first of all, being an entrepreneur is tough. The beverage business is extremely tough. To then put this extra layer of having this mission element to it, while it defined us, and the most important thing about the mission really is that it fuels your passion and persistence in a way that we clearly needed. But there were always challenges to the business. It starts with the fact that we had two people who had no beverage experience, so we had no idea what we were doing.
Do you think that might have been a hidden advantage?
It was in some sense, but literally my experience in the beverage industry was that I drank beverages. That was my... So... a lot of people can claim that, so it wasn't. It was, because we went at things very differently. We basically said, everyone makes bottled tea. They use powders and syrups. How come no one's using real tea leaves? And that was a good question to ask, and it did help us stand apart, but it made it challenging, because we'd go to these bottling plants, and we'd say, we want to brew with real tea leaves, and they'd say, well, we don't do that. And then we'd say, well, we also want to use spring water. We're going to truck in spring water. And they say, well, we don't do that. And then we say, well, we want to use organic cane sugar instead of high fructose corn syrup. And they say, well, we don't do that. By the end of it, they said, now, are you going to want to pack 25 bottles in a case instead of the 24? I said, well, why would we do that? I said, because we don't do that either. Okay. So we had...
Give us a time when you looked deep into your soul and you said, oh, man, I might have made a big mistake.
We made a lot of them. The worst one was we owned a bottling plant for 6 years. We were co-owners, because no one would pack our products. So we ended up being co-investors in a bottling plant. And it was just a nightmare, because instead of building a brand and thinking about selling product, I was driving down. I was in Pittsburgh, outside of Pittsburgh. I was driving down to Pittsburgh every month, worried about boilers and change parts, and it was just totally a distraction. We were losing, it was losing money, and it almost took the whole thing under. The other thing that really was always a challenge was distribution, and what's the flaw in that business plan? As you know, it gets the brand right and the mission right, but there's nothing in that business plan about distribution. Well, it turns out if you're selling a beverage, it's pretty important to get it to the shelf.
Yeah.
And we didn't have any sort of experience there or anything. So I'd go to these beverage distributors, and these are guys, these are Snapple and Arizona distributors, and they'd say, your product's not sweet enough, it's too expensive, it tastes like grass, and whatever it was. And we knew if we couldn't get to the stores, we weren't going to sell anything. And so instead, we built this patchwork, and I basically relying on the kindness of strangers. So we got a cheese distributor to bring us to gourmet stores. And then when we wanted to get to Bethesda Bagels, we had a corned beef distributor who brought us there. And it was just this very challenging thing. And ultimately, that was the value of Coca-Cola. And just to give you an appreciation, so our first few years, we were probably in a few dozen accounts. By the time Coke invested in 2008, we were in about 15,000 stores. Maybe 80% of those were natural food stores, and today we're in over 100,000 stores.
Oh my!
And all the Wendy's restaurants, all the Chick-fil-A restaurants. So we're just at a different level, and that's really because of the partnership with Coca-Cola.
Interesting. Tell me about the partnership with you and your co-founder Barry.
Yeah.
Did you find it? Do you think you could have done this on your own? Barry's not here. I don't know. I haven't been asked that question before. It was a great partnership. It was very different. We're totally different people. Yeah.
Barry is, in fact, when my classmates heard I was partnering with Barry, they thought I was joking because he's so different. But we were such wonderful compliments.
Describe Barry to us.
Barry
just
is
briefly, for those
extremely
who don't know.
creative, very analytical. He's not particularly
Tell us
personable.
Talk about his hair.
He has wild hair.
Yeah, he has wild hair.
Wild hair.
He's like he looks like kind of a mad professor.
Yeah, he's a mad professor.
Full of histrionics.
Yeah, exactly. He's brought kids and students to tears in class, cold calling. So different personality, but
a little bit different from Seth.
But we still are such great friends, but we were such great partners because we had a shared vision. The only time we came to differences was when we'd have a label language, and Barry would want to put in something snarky, and Julie would veto it, and that was sort of the way it worked. But around the big picture, we were always aligned, and so he was chairman of the board. He was not involved in the operations of the company, so I had full reign over the way to build the business. But he was a great advisor, a great pusher, but also a great encourager and a great support. We went through some incredibly intense moments right in the beginning of the book. Our middle son, literally the day before, we skipped, but when we started the company out of my house, we had gotten this appointment to go to Whole Foods, to the Whole Foods regional office. And so Barry came down because I was worried. I want to make sure I brewed the tea. We had to brew the tea in my kitchen. Let's brew it the right way. We got to stick a label on a Snapple bottle. I just wanted a little bit of, someone there to help me do this the right way. So Barry's in my kitchen, and we had we have a teapot, a tea kettle, but otherwise we're dealing with, Pyrex bowls and, coffee mugs, brewing tea. And Barry had bought some thermoses. We were putting in the thermoses. And as we're brewing all this, Julie walks in with our middle son. They'd just been to the doctor. And our middle son had been diagnosed with a coarctation of his aorta. His aorta was constricted. They were going to have to do major surgery within the next few weeks. But I didn't know that when Julie walked in, and I see her face, and I thought, oh, she's really upset about the mess. I'm like, oh, no, we'll take care of that. And so, incredibly intense times. And I can't put off the Whole Foods meeting because I've just left my job. This is like the one opportunity to make things happen. And Barry was a great support throughout it all, and he still has been. But you go through some intense things, and life isn't scripted. You have to be able to respond, and so then
the middle son just is
yes,
A-okay.
He's alive and well. He is graduating from Emory this spring, and he can beat me in every sport we play. So.
And it's continuing the family tradition of socially conscious
work.
work.
He's taking a job with Teach for America in Chicago next year.
So let's talk about partnership here for a second, because I think that when you're 17 and you're at LearnServe and you're trying to start a venture, you need help.
Yeah.
What advice do you have for them about who to go for,
Yeah.
who to go to for help, or how do you find people who can supplement
Yeah.
what who are good at things that you're not good at?
Well, that's the thing important to recognize. There's nobody, no one's good at everything. That's just a fact. And so it's lonely and it is occasionally intense to be building a business because there's things you put on yourself, or building an enterprise, I'll say. There's things you put on yourself that you can't always share with everybody. When we had trouble meeting payroll, I didn't necessarily want to go talk to somebody inside the company and say, I'm not even sure we're going to be able to cover payroll this week. That doesn't, so, I had
But you had, just to be clear, you had moments like those.
Oh, they were, yes, yeah, multiple moments, absolutely. So I think what you really want to be able to do is just have an openness, and that takes humility. And so, to absolutely recognize, you have to have confidence, but you have to have humility, right? And those are
exactly.
There's a balance there. But in the sense, being able to ask people for help takes confidence.
Right.
Exactly. Because someone who lacks confidence doesn't want to admit they don't know everything, and so. That's really the key, is just asking for help. And before I launched Honest Tea, I did my own little listening tour, and I went to all these different people spoke to someone from the beer industry, someone from the restaurant industry, for the food industry, and just for taking them out to lunch, I was able to learn enough that sort of had a little bit of an orientation.
Great. So besides humility and confidence mixed together, what other kinds of business skills do you think the LearnServe students need to really develop?
I think one of the keys that is underdeveloped, especially in these privileged communities, is salesmanship. Salesmanship often has an association with being crass. But no matter what you do, if you're building something, you need to sell people on ideas, on product, on investment. And so, I love it when our kids whether they're doing a lemonade stand or my youngest son has this great business where he buys used textbooks at the end of the semester. He buys all these textbooks from his classmates, and then he has to sort of convince them that, hey, your used textbook's not worth anything to you. I'll give you $10 for it. And then he goes and he sells it online for $40. But he has, it's
much better margins than the beverage business.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So being able, part of what it is about salesmanship that's really important is you have to be willing to be rejected. And once again, we pamper our kids so much, we shield them from rejection. So salesmanship is sort of the manifestation of it, but then it starts with resilience. And how do you help people experience defeat in a constructive way? So that a lot of that happens through sports. A lot of that happens through arts. Of course, it happens a bit in the classroom, but so much of what we develop in people is not graded.
Interesting. So just to round this out, we're going to open it up to you guys for questions here. So the advice is be humble, but also have some confidence, believe in yourself. One way to believe in yourself is to actually know what you're about.
Yeah.
Have that mission out there. And also, one of the most important things, I'm just summarizing Seth here, is to develop that sense of resilience. You're going to get rejected and rejected and rejected and rejected, and you have to get up after that rejection. So I think that's excellent guidance for a lot of these young people.
But by the way, that salesmanship will also help you ask for people for help as well. If you've sort of gotten used to it.
And sales skills, being on the right. We're going to have some of the students pitching their businesses here later today, so you'll have to check out their sales skills. One last thing, Seth, before we go out here. So your latest venture is something called Beyond Meat.
Right.
Beyond Meat. Sounds like a very interesting venture, particularly to our sponsor, Rockland's. So tell us about that, and tell us how you became a vegetarian, and then we'll go out to the crowd for some questions.
First of all, I have nothing against meat. It's a staple of people's diets, a lot of people's diets. But our family's been vegetarian for more than 10 years. And here's the very simple way to think about this. Basically, what is a cow? A cow takes plants and converts them to protein. It doesn't do it very efficiently, though, right? You can, for every, basically, 10 acre, there's a different way to create protein out of plants. What if you cut out the cow and just extracted the protein from the plants and then made that into the meat? And the problem with most vegetarian meat alternatives is they have the consistency of sponges and the nutritional profile of bread. So what Beyond Meat is it's really an R&D company. We have scientists who have developed and are still perfecting a technology to create meat that replicates animal-based protein. It grills up, it sizzles, it gets dark the way a conventional or an animal protein would. And the big picture is to transform the meat counter to the protein counter. And you do that by making products that are analogous, literally a lateral substitution. And one of the very exciting developments that just happened this month, we met with Whole Foods, with Beyond Meat, and later this year we'll be launching this is not official, so I will say Whole Foods has expressed a great deal of interest in launching a plant-based burger in the meat counter. So it's a really exciting step. And of course, the advantage of a plant-based protein, in addition to the fact that you're not killing a sentient being, is 1/10 of the land footprint, 1/10 of the water footprint, which is of course a very relevant issue, 1/10 of the energy footprint, not to mention the carbon gases that come off from cows. But more importantly, if we think about scaling, the world now, as incomes increase, how are we going to feed the world? It is physically impossible for this planet to feed 7 billion people on an animal-based protein diet. And so this is a global idea, and if we can scale this, it's a big idea.
Yeah, interesting. Let's go out here. Who has a question for Seth? Do we have microphones, by the way, out here?
Just shout.
Yeah, right there. Yes, sir.
Question was, how do we come up with different flavors? Well, the amazing thing about tea is that it's the world's second most popular beverage, second only to water. So, our R&D facility is really the globe. And so we find teas from all over the world, ingredients from all over the world. Then the key is it has to taste good, when it's served cold. It has to taste good with not a lot of sweetener. And so initially our first teas, Moroccan mint, Kashmiri chai, were all based on cultures of origin. What's really fun, and this is also not official, but I'll also announce this, that this spring we're going to be launching an organic sports drink. You go back to that first run I took, that was, in a sense, the thing I was most thirsty for. And there really isn't, when I taste the competition, aside from being neon green, there isn't an organic sports beverage. And so we're really excited.
Do you have a name for that?
It's a very creative name. It's called Honest Sport.
Ah.
We tried other names.
Yeah, several meetings. We brought in an army of consultants to help you on that one.
Edge, all these other things. It was like, you know what? This makes clear what it is.
How many flavors are there now?
So we have about 18 flavors of tea, but we actually have a line called Honest Kids.
Oh, right, of course.
That is actually as large as the tea out in the Nielsen measured channels. So that's a whole part of the business. We have a line called Honest Fizz, which is available here tonight, a 0-calorie organic soda line. So we're and of course, Honest Sport is on its way. So
great.
Yeah.
Right there.
Well, one of the keys is that it's literally in the product, right? So by the fact that it's organic, the fact that it's lower calorie and it's fair trade, we say it's brewed, it's in the bottle, and that just makes it extremely it's easier to protect because nobody, and of course Coca-Cola has learned, we all know the new Coke story. So don't start trying to cut and interfere. And what's really important about the equities of the brand is they're third party. It's not like we're saying this is natural or environmentally friendly. This is USDA organic. It's a federally enforced seal. There's an objective definition of what organic is. We can't, even if we wanted to bring in a cheaper sweetener, we can't. It's protected by the mark. The same with fair trade. So it starts with a product. And then it continues with the fact that we have our own office in Bethesda. So, and then ultimately, I'll forgive my lack of being humble, but the fact that I'm still there, I think helps enforce it too. There are very few companies that get sold where the founder sticks around and is still relevant to the business. And just to build on it, I was in Barcelona last month. We're launching this in Europe now. So we're getting to all these places. Now we're in the moment where, back in the bad old days when I was worried about, the plant shutting down, we're now in sort of the days I used to daydream about. We have this commitment to democratizing organics. And let me tell you, people don't go to Wendy's to buy organic food.
Right.
But it's on the menu. It's front and center. It's in the kids' meal. It's the first option. It's the default option when they get a kids' meal. It's really exciting.
Excellent. Okay, Kathy.
So the question was, how has our culture infected Coca-Cola? Well, there's one very objective way to tell, which is that 8 years ago, Coca-Cola wasn't selling any organic products. They weren't selling any fair trade certified products. Now we're actually one of the fastest growing parts of their business. Period. Yes, because what happened in Europe when I went there, it was amazing. Their business, anybody who's followed, sees that soda is not a growing category.
No.
And so somebody told me when you're part of a large food company, conventional food, you wake up every day thinking about how you're going to manage the decay. And so when you see a business that's growing the way our business is growing, it's very easy to get. And the way their business is, it's not that Coke had a good year last year as a business, but it's not, the demand for soda is not growing. So the diversification is really important.
Yes, right there.
Right, so the question was, the Honest Tea label does not have the words Coca-Cola. No, it continues to say Honest Tea in Bethesda, Maryland, because that is where we do our place of business. We're not obligated to put it on. If you go to our website, it's very clear that it is, we certainly don't hide it, but we also know that, saying this is a product of the Coca-Cola company is not going to help generate more sales for this product. So the question was how, having been an employee and now being an employer, do you mean sort of from running Honest Tea and then being part of Coca-Cola, or from Calvert? Yeah. I think one of the things I've really learned, and this is an underlying principle that is just so core. Everybody, I think, wants to have, and you read about this, they want to have a context for their work. They want to understand what it is and why it's hopefully meaningful to the world. But they also want to have autonomy. Julie and I spent a year in Moscow in 1989 and 90, and you just...
Anything happened during that period?
It was a pretty eventful period. And, they said the saying was, they pretend to pay us, we pretend to work.
Right.
The idea that you didn't have any ability to control the outcome of your work. So we've really created this very aggressive empowerment model where all of our sales managers, all of our marketing managers have their own P&L, their own profit and loss statement they manage. And so they have full visibility of it, and they have full ownership of it, which means if they deliver great results, no one asks, what kind of bonus am I getting? They know. And if it doesn't deliver, they can't really blame somebody else. So I just think that is fundamental, and it ultimately translates to, do people have a sense of self-worth?
Yeah. Yes.
So the question was, how can somebody, especially a woman, define herself in the workplace? And it's funny. It really is. You're more defined, I think, by what you don't do. And obviously I'm not always go along with the crowd. And when I was in high school and in college, I didn't drink. And it wasn't that I just never got into it. And by the end of college, it was just like a point of difference. And so people always knew, well, I didn't do drugs either, maybe a little bit of a square, but they just sort of understood who I was. And so, not that I'm not opposed to somebody drinking, but it's just like, this is not who I am, and I'm not gonna, and of course there was so much, the reason I mentioned, because there was so much peer pressure to do it. Everybody was doing it. Literally, I think I was the only person I knew that didn't do that. But it helped define who I was. And so I think a lot of times it's when you make the choice to not do what everyone else is doing that you really help create, you're branding yourself. And then of course it's every decision, right? I mean, branding is such a powerful thing, and so we're somebody who we pay attention to every detail. So it is what the label looks like. It is what the cap looks like. It is the language we use. It is the ingredients, of course, and it's how we present ourselves. So it's every step of the way. And I think what you can't do is choose when you want to be yourself. You have to be yourself all the time. That's my opinion.
Back there. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So let me I want to give the big picture context. I'm not evading the question. I'll get to it. But I really want to help everyone appreciate why, not just Honest Tea, but why this work is so important. Every 5 years, the UN ranks the average life expectancy of all the countries in the world. There's about 200 countries in the world. And so the United States, the wealthiest nation in the history of the world, more knowledge of science, medicine, nutrition, and than any civilization has ever had. So we got to be top 10, right? Well, in the latest rankings, they came out in 2015, so you had Japan number 1, Italy number 2, the United States was number 37. So you have this nation with incredible wealth, incredible knowledge, not living up to its potential. And to me, it's unconscionable. And what's so striking to me is we have, We have the knowledge. We have the ability to do so much better. But the fact is, it's not where we are. And to me, that's why entrepreneurship can be so powerful, because you can absolutely change that direction. But it's not going to happen through the established companies. That's just not how they think. So when we look at our impact, we do look at how many bottles of tea are we selling. We know every time we reach more people, we're helping convert people's diets. We also know, we also look at how many pounds of organic ingredients we're purchasing, because we know we're helping create more demand for organic agriculture. And just to give you a sense of scale, in 2007, the year before we did our transaction with Coca-Cola, we bought about 800,000 pounds of organic ingredients. This year we'll buy over 10 million pounds of organic ingredients. So now we go to these communities, and it's not some guy from Bethesda saying, you know, organic, fair trade. It's saying, we're part of the Coca-Cola company. If you want to even send us samples, it has to be organic and fair trade. So the other thing we look at is what power we have over the competition. There's a great quote, I'm not going to get it exactly right, but the head of Patagonia says, we have to make it uncomfortable for our competitors not to follow us. And so when you look at the kids category in particular, when we got into this, every kid's drink, those pouches were at 100 calories, and all made with the cheapest ingredients. Basically, you only bought what was on sale. Since we've come to market and Honest Kids has grown, we have seen the whole calorie profile of the drinks shift down. The average calorie profile is about 70. Just this year, Capri Sun has launched organic Capri Sun. And I can guarantee you they wouldn't have done that if we hadn't been creating that competitive pressure.
Let's take one or two. Let's take two more. Anybody? We didn't hear from the folks. Anybody in the way back, in the bleachers?
Yeah. Well, that's an interesting question. So so I'll try to rephrase it. I hope I rephrase it right.
We're going to restate it for you guys. Yeah.
That a lot of people they start with a mission, but they don't always start with a product. But I actually will disagree with you. I think I started with a mission as well. And I could have said my mission is to make organics mainstream, to make healthy products available, to democratize them so everyone has access to them. And maybe I might have launched protests in front of Coca-Cola's offices, and I might have started a petition, or I might have even instituted a boycott. But I can tell you that would have been a lot less effective. So I think it's fine to start with a mission. And I had a nonprofit background, so and for the first 10 years, Honest Tea was a nonprofit, so that was very, very, very appropriate. So I think it's fine to start with a mission and be open to the path. That at least for me, for right now, this is the most effective way for me to make this part of my mission work. But obviously with Beyond Meat, it's also a for-profit, or striving to be a for-profit enterprise. But I'm more inclined to think about, because ultimately it comes down to what are you passionate about. And I might have had a product that was great, but if I'm not passionate about it, I'm not going to be an effective salesperson. I'm not going to be willing to drive through the night to Pittsburgh. And before Pittsburgh, we were in Buffalo, and that was a really long drive, especially in the snow. And you just have to have passion about it. And so whatever the point of passion is, that to me, that's more important than whether it's a for-profit, nonprofit, or if you have a product.
We have one more. Let me wrap it up on this. So, what's the best piece of advice you've ever gotten?
That's a tough one.
Okay, I got more. What's the one thing that you wish one thing, if you could go back in time, because didn't you start around 18 years ago, right around now?
Yeah.
All right, so what's the one thing, if you could go back and tell younger Seth, watch out for this, what's the one thing that you wish you had known in your younger self that you now know today, in the hopes that you can impart it to some of our young people here?
I think there's a sense, when I launched, I had this, it was well-founded, but I had a sense of panic. Like, oh man, this thing's going down. I gotta stay up all night. I started a habit, which I have yet to be able to break, of clenching my teeth at night. And the first year, within the first weeks after our delivery to Whole Foods, we were at a family picnic, and I was having a piece of pizza. I felt something crunch in my mouth. I said, "There's not supposed to be anything hard in pizza," and my tooth had cracked. So I went to the dentist, and she said, "Well, you're grinding your teeth at night. Are you under any stress?" I said, "Yeah, I guess so." So, and I've tried to take some yoga, and I do exercise every day. But I guess the point, one of my takeaways is, and I still sometimes have to remind Julie of this, because you can be as productive and as efficient if you just take it back a little bit. And so, there's a lot of adrenaline, and so it's not that you don't need adrenaline or energy or intensity. It's just you can do the same work with just a deep breath and a little more perspective. And, I have a brother who's 10 years older than I am, and I have a lot more gray hair than he does. I think I probably, the beverage business is tough, and I don't have any regrets. I wouldn't have done anything different, but I do think the mindset can just create a little more calm for all of the people around you. And so I've developed that now more than I had it.
Great. So everybody here, take a deep breath and give Seth a big round of applause.